13 Principles of Good Clinical Practice, Foundation for Human Research Best Practices, pertaining to all clinical trials and social, behavioral, and educational research studies. Good clinical practice provides guidance for researchers to conduct sound and ethical research and to ensure participant protection. Principle 1. Adherence to ethical principles. Researchers must conduct clinical trials and social, behavioral, and educational research studies that are in accordance with ethical principles. These principles include respect for persons, which is accomplished by obtaining informed consent, respecting privacy and confidentiality, and providing protections for vulnerable populations. Beneficence refers to balancing of risks and benefits, and justice, which ensures equitable participant selection and distribution of risks and benefits. Principle 2. Minimization of foreseeable risks. Before initiating a research study, researchers must weigh risks against anticipated benefit. Risk refers to probability of harm or injury occurring because of participation in a research study. Benefit refers to participants, others with the same condition or situation, or society as a whole. The risks-benefit assessment means that risk to participants must be reasonable in relation to anticipated benefits and the importance of the knowledge that may be reasonably expected to result. Principle 3. Rights, safety, and well-being of trial subjects prevail over interests of science and society. This is the primary role of the UNM Office of Institutional Review Board, or OIRB. The UNM OIRB ensures that the safety, rights, and welfare of research participants are protected through the initial and continuing review of human subject research and monitoring of approved projects. The UNM OIRB also ensures that UNM remains in compliance with relevant federal regulations regarding human subject research. Principle 4. Available non-clinical and clinical information on an investigational product is adequate to support the proposed research study. UNM's OIRB solicits and reviews required protocol documentation. For more information, see the links provided. Principle 5. Research studies should be scientifically sound and described in a clear, detailed protocol. Protocol serves as the study's operating instruction manual and provides a roadmap for the research team to follow. Protocol provides enough detail that another researcher could replicate the study. It ensures that the research team follows uniform methodology and procedures to minimize variability and strengthen the quality of the data collected. Any revisions to protocol must be approved by IRB and be immediately documented and shared with the research team, along with any training on new procedures and changes to ensure consistent procedures are followed for every participant. Principle 6. A research study should be conducted in compliance with the protocol that has received prior IRB approval. Research teams must always follow their IRB-approved detailed protocol. Principle 7. Medical care given to and medical decisions made on behalf of research participants should always be the responsibility of a qualified physician or other licensed care provider. Please refer to the UNM OIRB website and contact OIRB staff with any questions. Principle 8. Each individual involved in conducting a research study should be qualified by education, training, and experience to perform their respective tasks. The PI researcher obligations after IRB approval includes ensuring that the project team members are qualified and trained to perform procedures and duties assigned to them during the project. Retaining documentation showing human subjects research training, or CITI, has been completed within the last 3 years for all study personnel. Keeping confirmation of conflict of interest disclosures on file for the current year for all team members prior to having them perform research duties. Principle 9. Freely given informed consent should be obtained from every participant or their legally authorized representative prior to participation in the research study. Researchers are responsible for educating prospective participants about their study and must provide participants the opportunity to discuss any questions or concerns. The written consent document contains important information for participants, including the purpose of the study, the procedures, the risks and benefits, and how the collected data will be stored, used, and shared if applicable. The document ideally is written at an 8th grade level, avoiding medical and research jargon. Only the current IRB-approved consent form should be used when enrolling participants. For revised consent form and verbal consent, researchers must document IRB-approved revisions and keep records of verbal consent. Revised consent forms must be IRB-approved, and the new version must be printed out and the old version immediately destroyed. Verbal consent is obtained under a waiver of document of consent, and researchers must keep records of when participants were consented and by whom. Principle 10. All study information and research data should be recorded, handled, and stored in a way that allows its accurate reporting, interpretation, and verification. Some data collection best practices include the following. Use permanent ink in entries, never a pencil. Signatures requiring a date must be completed by the same person. Entries must use the current date with no back or future dating, and no blank documents should ever be pre-signed, for example, sending out a signed consent form to a participant. Research notes should not be written on the consent form. Document what is and what is not done, remembering that if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. Time procedures require documentation of the precise time the procedure is conducted. Mistakes should be corrected with a single line through the incorrect information so that the original entry is still legible and then initialed and dated. Some tips for organizing electronic research files include naming files clearly, include version dates and file names so it's clear which is the most recent, and to help keep files ordered chronologically. Standardize file types with prefixes such as AD at the beginning of any recruitment materials and data in front of all data collection tools. Some recommendations for file naming are provided here, and some recommendations for electronic file storage are provided here. Almost all studies require supporting documents. Some forms are available from the UNM IRB Study Tools webpage. Take a look at some of the examples below. Principle 11, the confidentiality of records that could identify participants should be protected, respecting the privacy and confidentiality rules of the applicable regulatory requirements. Collected data must be stored securely in the manner detailed in the IRB-approved protocol. Confidentiality procedures details how collected study data will be transmitted, secured, and stored, and how the study team ensures that only authorized researchers have access to the data, and how and when it will be de-identified. Protection against risk of breach of confidentiality requires the removal of personal identifiers from study documents whenever possible, including study ID or code. If identifiers must be stored, use a key code or linking list and store in a secured location separate from consent forms and coded study data. Access to this key code or linking list should be limited to only approved study team members and destroyed when no longer required for research. Principle 12. Investigational products should be manufactured, handled, and stored in accordance with applicable regulations and only used in accordance with approved protocol. Check out the information resources provided below. Principle 13. Systems with procedures that assure the quality of every aspect of the research study should be implemented. Again, refer to the information links provided below.